Aspry, welcome aboard to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So here's my first question.
Hmm.
You have a long and incredible career across media, and we're gonna talk about that. But my real question is, what got you on to fantasy? What was your either first fantasy book, or what's the most memorable book? Who's your kind of role model for fantasy writing?
Well, I've been doing the whole fantasy thing in one way or another since I was about 14, 15 years old, but I was a comic book geek at the time. I was huge into
Um,
comic books, and by the time my collection ended up being sold for a heck of a lot less money than it was worth, um, I was about 8,000 strong.
oh wow,
And, yeah, yeah, and yeah, I was hugely into superheroes. I was hugely into movies. I was really big into wrestling. Actually, the whole good versus evil thing
yeah,
just totally resonated with me from day one.
mm,
And I can't say that I was fantasy unless it was in the movies.
yeah,
But uh, so around the time I heard, I was into Willow and the Hawk the
that's a
Slayer and all
classic.
those, all those
Yeah.
visual mediums. But by the time Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring hit theaters, or was supposed to be hitting theaters, I wanted to jump on that bandwagon, and I started reading all three books at that point on, all four actually, but The Hobbit included, and
Yeah.
I was just hooked from that point on. And I was I had done a lot of writing on my own, from doing my own comic books and illustrating my own comic books too, to
Oh, do
working
you
at the
have like
Aspry
something on
Jones.
you? Can you like show us something hands reach? Because that's pretty
No.
hardcore. Oh man.
I'm sorry, I
So
wish I
so
did.
I was in some meeting or another, and I'm like, just follow the bird. Forget the bird, follow the river. So I quoted Willow, and one person picked up the reference, and I'm like, you're my new friend.
Mm. That happens to me quite a bit too, yeah.
It's such a delight. I mean, so for me, it was, I don't know if you know this one, but
Yeah,
Dragonlance. So Tracy Hickman, Margaret Weiss, the Dragonlance Chronicles. I felt like I fell in love with fantasy through that series.
okay.
Um, so it was such a game changer. And then of course everybody's into Lord of the Rings and everything because they became super
Mm.
famous with the movies and all. But I find that the old classics like Willow, it just they had a magic to them that I feel like the new superheroes movies maybe don't capture. I don't know. What are you feeling about all the new superhero releases?
Dream come true.
Yeah, you love them. I feel like there've been some disappointments as well.
Well, that happens. You're not going to hit it. You're not going to hit a home run every single time. But they were hitting home runs every single time in the beginning. Even the ones
Yeah,
that
that's
weren't
true.
all that great, like the first Thor movie. It was still landmark
Yeah, yeah,
entertainment.
yeah, that's right.
And I've been waiting for that my entire life. I've been
Yeah,
waiting for these movies, these comic books to come to life since I was a little kid. And they
that's right.
they tried to do it. They tried to do it in the '80s. Superman was successful in the '70s. Batman, Tim Burton's Batman was, but then you had Howard the Duck. I mean, you had a lot of failures in that group, and I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but I kind of gave up on the whole thing for a while. But then when the MCU came out with their new
Yeah,
movies, boy,
yeah.
was I jazzed about it, and they knocked it out of the park. The casting was perfect every single time. So yeah, this it's a dream come true to me because my comic books have finally come to life.
When you how about the last the Marvels where what's her name, the actress, she starts singing in the middle. They put kind of a musical part in that. Did you see that one?
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. After Thanos bit the dust or
Yeah.
became dust, see what I did?
Oh, there you
I kind
go.
of lost. I lost the deal for it because just like the point that you just made, it kind of went a little bit downhill. And as geeky as I am for
Yeah.
comic books, or at least I used to be, I kind of lost the zeal for it.
Yeah, we've had a few bad ones. I feel like my friend looked at me. We're at the cinema. We actually went to the cinema to watch this. My friend looks at me and he's like, "Ari, what the fuck am I watching?" I was like, "No, this is pretty good. I'm enjoying it." I'm like, "Ari, what is wrong with you?" And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
he still gives me shit about enjoying that one, the Marvels. I thought it was cool,
Okay,
but
listen, I didn't know we could say fucking shit. That's awesome. Okay, great. Let's
yeah,
no reins on
just
this
no,
board.
no. We have no limits. So okay, so you have this pretty amazing career
Yeah.
doing, you were at CNN, you're at Fox, you're at ABC, you were doing everything from, engineering type roles to whatever was needed, videotaping, all the things.
Somebody's got the
What
LinkedIn
was
page pulled up.
what is your, like, what's your, it can be a high pressure environment, right? At times.
Yes.
What's your shit show nightmare story? What was the worst moment you've had throughout your media career?
I was there at CNN for 9/11.
Yeesh.
That
What
was
did
a
that look
nightmarish.
like?
That was a nightmarish day of work, and it turned into about 12 days straight of nightmares and constant round the clock coverage, bomb scares, the city shutting down here and there. Lots of people, lots of people afraid for their lives. It was a tough time.
There's nobody who cannot say the exact moment, describe it at elaborate detail. The second they heard about 9/11, including myself, what was yours? What was the exact moment? What were you doing?
I was on break. I came in very early in the morning, and I had an 8 o'clock lunch break. So I was in the break room hanging out, and my manager Johnny just starts. In order to get to the Larry King studio, you had to run through the break room from master control. So we were in the middle. So
Hmm.
my manager Johnny goes running through the break room at top speed, and he was an excitable guy. So I remember saying to myself, I'm like, wow, Johnny really should chill out every now and again, man. This guy he needs to get mellow. I didn't know what was going on. So he called me off my break and he said, Spree, I need you to get down here. Spree is my nickname. I need you to get down into the Larry King studio and point a camera out the window, shoot it downtown at the buildings that are burning. And
Holy
I was like,
shit.
what? What's happening? So I go down there. I point the camera out the window and I flick it into robotic camera because that's that was a thing around that time. Robotic cameras, um, taking a lot of jobs away from people. And uh, from that point on, that particular shot was managed by robotic camera shooting downtown, and that's that famous shot. Everybody sees it. It's all over the internet. If you pull up 9/11, that's the shot and
Wow.
coming from CNN. So that was us. And after that, needless to say, that was the end of my lunch break, and I went right back to work.
No shit. Lord. What's your most salient memory from those difficult 7 days and I would say months after?
It was a, you know what? It was a weird time for New York in general
Yeah.
because I'm not a proponent of hate by any means. In fact, I'm quite the opposite. But I noticed that the animosity that the New York had toward the terrorists kind of came together in a sort of unity that was actually
Mm,
kind of beautiful. And a lot of people were getting along in New York. A lot of people were looking out for each other. And, of course, it didn't last long. But, it was I remember it very fondly. And a lot of us at work, we were kind of a close knit family at work. It wasn't a normal job.
yeah.
Everybody knew each other and liked each other. And I think as a group we grew a lot closer after 9/11, and sadly enough, we were forced into a divorce later on when
Mm,
when CNN had these massive layoffs, and the jobs that we loved so much, we were just it was over. So that was the thing too. CNN, man, it had some ups and downs.
yeah.
9/11 didn't
Media
help.
is 9/11 didn't help. Media has been hugely affected by the internet and everything that's happened. It's been quite a roller coaster.
Mhm.
when you think about your media career, we talked about the kind of worst moment. What was your best moment?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. My best moment was probably when I was promoted to supervisor. CNN was the type of place where nobody left.
Mm,
For somebody, you had the only way you could get promoted if somebody quit or died.
mm,
And, God forbid anybody died, but a lot of people did end up quitting. And slowly I rose through the ranks, and I was in a great spot. I was the supervisor of the shift, but I wasn't the manager. I
mm.
love I'm going to use a Star Trek analogy here. I love the idea of being Commander Riker, but I would hate to be Captain Picard. You know what I mean? You get the elevation, but you don't have to talk to
Not the responsibility.
the higher ups. You don't. There's certain
Right.
responsibilities you can shirk. It was a perfect shift for me.
Wonderful. So after this, would you call it an exciting career? You
Yeah.
decided to start writing.
No, I've been
Tell
writing
me.
my whole life.
So keep me honest here. When was that moment that you decided you were going to publish your first book?
Yeah. When I was about 16.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm
Oh wow.
52. And my very first time being published professionally was my English teacher, the honors English teacher in Asbury Park High School in Jersey, Donna Mitchell. She was doing a special project for us kids in the class, and there was she wanted me to write an article about it, and she
Mm,
would get it into the community newspaper. And I don't know what kind of pull she had, but she thought I was she, from my essays and so forth. She must have thought I was a good writer. So
nice.
I wrote the article, and I was published professionally, and I still have that laminated. I have a picture of it. I've been keeping close to me all these years, and right then and there, I said, "This is my thing. I like this." And I
What
said, "You
did
know
it?
what? Ultimately, I want to write a book, and it took decades. I finally got to it, but better late than never, I guess. But yeah,
Mm,
yeah, I've
that's
been
fair.
wanting to write this book since I was 16.
What was the feeling to see your article in the newspaper and kind of pick that newspaper up and like that's mine?
Elation, elation, and like I had found my calling. I felt as if this is what I was put here to do, and sadly, I didn't go into a career doing that.
Mm,
I worked at the Asbury Park Press for a while, and I wrote 2 articles for them when I was 18 before I went to school. And I didn't. I found out way early that I didn't want to write for anybody. I didn't like it. I don't want to
mm,
write for as a job. I want to
yeah.
write for me. I want to write the things that I want to write about. And I said to myself, I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And then when I went to college, I ended up going into TV. TV threw money at me and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was in TV for 25 years. And yeah, if I could go back in time and tell young me uh, to not go into TV, to stick with writing and write those books, I would do that. I would do it.
So now you're publishing or published another book. Tell us about it. Why fantasy? Tell us about the book. How did you come to the idea? What's the process look like?
Well, uh, Protectors of the Light Crown, my debut novel. It's book one in a trilogy, and I have every book written in my head already. I just don't have it on paper yet. And Protectors of the Light Crown. It's a story about good and evil, of course. They're all about that. It's a story about some unlikely heroes who get together to try to stop the devil, and they're all about that too. But the twist to my story is that it's got a multiversal theme. We're jumping through the multiverse a lot. One of my main characters in the book is named Dexter, and when he goes to sleep, he ends up in another reality, and he ends up bringing someone from one of those realities back into his. And what and it's a whirlwind of crazy after that. I literally threw the kitchen sink at this thing, and it was just so much fun. I said, okay, here's the main challenge to do is make it as crazy as I possibly can, but still make it make sense. Make sure that when the reader is reading it, that the changes aren't jarring. You know, we're jumping realities here, and I'm also jumping through time. I'm doing the whole thing here, man, and it was so much fun to write. I just said, you know what? There's decades of this I've been keeping bottled up. I'm going to let it all out right here on these pages. And I love what happened. I love the results. I still read my own book after 30,000 times of reading during the editing process and all that.
Yep.
And, and everybody who's come across it, nobody has given me honest reviews saying they've hated it. They've given me the honest review saying that they really like it.
Wonderful. What was the what was the hard parts in writing a book? With the when we see on TV writers block and all that. Did you go through that process? What did it feel like for you?
Absolutely not. I didn't go through any writer's block. I didn't struggle. It just flowed. It just fell out of my brain. I think it goes a long way. Not that I'm teaching a class on this or anything, but I
Mm,
think it goes a long way to when you're writing your beginning, you have to know your ending.
mm,
If you know your ending, then you know what you're powering toward in order to get your story across. At least that is the way I see it. Now, not speaking from my point of view and not able to ever speak from the point of view of another person, I don't know what it's like to have a writer's block because I knew what these people were going to do. I knew what they were like. I knew what they wouldn't do because of their personalities, and it was just about me getting it down on paper.
did
Now,
you?
of course, because I had so much going on, there
Mm,
was the only trouble I had was juggling it and making it to make and making sure it made sense.
coherent. They did you start off before starting writing by having kind of the narrative, what's the beginning, the middle, and the end, and also clearly defining all the characters, who they were, what their persona was, or did it kind of evolve inside of the writing?
No, I started out my writing process as far as a lot of people have said that they love the characters the most as
Mm,
far as the book goes. The story is the story, but they said
right.
they love the characters and that there's a lot of depth to the characters, and there's reason for that.
Mm,
I go back in time to their grandparents and I get note cards out and I very generically write down what their grandparents were into and what they did. Now, and I ask myself, what kind of people would grow up being raised by these folks that I ended up
mm,
I did on the generic sense in a generic sense. The kids that they have will be very organic
right.
because we go through life uh products of everything that we say, think, and do. And our belief system is based on our experiences. So what I did was I gave these people experiences. And by the time I got to their parents, I said, all right, now my main character is raised by these people. This person has
Mm,
this idiosyncrasy. This person has this quirk. They have these values, and that they're trying to imprint them on these main characters in this book. Who do I have here? And what I ended up finding out, which is amazing, this was a eureka moment. What I ended up finding out was the story I had planned out. These characters that I ended up developing wouldn't make these decisions. They wouldn't do the stuff I
oh
had them
wow,
doing. And I had to change my story because the characters weren't characters anymore. They were people.
I
And that was
love
a
that.
fascinating discovery. And I said, I still have the note cards. They're like, it's like their entire lifetime before they got to my book. They tell me what I'm dealing with, who these people are, and subsequently where this book is going.
I feel like if I had to put in one thing that makes movies, books, writing really good or really bad, it's
Yeah.
exactly this point around the depth of the characters. Sure, the story and the narrative is important, right? You've got the archetypes of stories, and you've got stories that just don't make it, and you see that sometimes in movies. But I feel like great characters with depth that you can fall in love with can
Mhm.
almost overcome a bad storyline because you just fall in love with the characters, and it kind of makes up for it.
Yeah, yeah,
There's actually a few really good movies like that where the story is kind of shit. You're like, what the hell? But you just fall in love with the characters, and it's like, this is delightful. I want to get to know this person. I don't know if you've ever seen Amélie. It's a French movie, but it's kind
fantastic
of
film.
like that. The narrative, the story is kind of crazy. It's like she's looking for this person that she met once, and it's like,
Yeah.
I can't even tell you what the movie's about,
I
but
can't
the
either.
characters in the movie, oh my god, there's this guy who basically he can't like do anything because he has this like bone sickness, so if he does anything he breaks his bones. And then she's such a quirky character, you just immediately fall in love with her.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing movie. Okay, so you've put out the book
Mhm.
to the world. What do you do next?
I work on book two. Oh, well, actually, no, no, I don't. Well, the promotion, this has been a whirlwind of an experience because
Mm,
promoting the book, I'm doing all kinds of stuff that I never thought I would do.
right.
I'm doing things that I never thought I had to do. Um, this is my fourth podcast interview, and I'm still not used to it. I don't think you get
Uh,
used to it. Uh, you know, uh, I hired publicists, and they're taking me through these motions about press releases and promoting on Goodreads and social media stuff and the things that I've
right.
never done and didn't think I was
Right.
going to do. And so it's really wild. So I'm doing all that stuff now. I'm presently with a company called Winning Proof, and they're knocking it out of the park. They're killing it, and it's a lot of fun. I didn't think it was going to be this much fun. I thought it was just going to be a lot of tedium, a lot of work that I didn't want to do. Uh,
Did
and
your expectation was that, oh, somebody else would market the book. You didn't think it would be you center in front, did you?
it still isn't me.
It still
I'm
isn't you.
totally
Okay.
paying people to do this for me. It
So
still isn't
I
me.
get this. I get this a lot from authors. They did not know what they were going to get into in regards to
Right.
the size of the responsibility that they had to basically market and sell their own book.
Yeah.
Whether you're paying somebody else or you're doing a lot of it yourself,
Well,
it's quite the surprise. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I said to myself, I said, "Look, it took a lot of work to write this book. I did that
Right.
work. I'm not. This isn't my bailiwick. Somebody who is a professional, somebody who's supposed to know what they're doing, they're going to have to take those reins for me." And
Mm,
I messed that up. The first group I hired really botched it, and
mm,
uh, and my present publicist is actually cleaning up a lot of their messes. So, but the way I see it. I feel as if there's no such thing as a free lunch.
yeah.
So the way I talked myself into believing it, I said, well, I had to put up with that in order to find her. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In order to find winning proof. So the way I see it, I went through the trial by fire.
So we have, believe it or not, we're out of time. This has been so much fun. We have one question, which is the only
Okay.
scripted question on the show.
Oh wow.
It's a difficult one because it gets personal. If you had to get back to 20-something-year-old Aspry,
Mm.
what would you advise him?
I would advise him to never, ever, as long as he lives, touch a drop of alcohol. And he would promptly let it go through one ear and out the other and forget everything I said, and he would do it anyway.
This is the problem. You're not the first guest to say that. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but I would not have listened. But you know what? Maybe, just maybe, somebody young in our audience in their 20s is listening, and every single one of our guests has given their advice from the heart. So maybe we can make a small difference.
Maybe.
Aspry,
I
thank you
hope
so
so.
much for joining the show today. I deeply
Thank you,
appreciate
Larry.
you.
It was my pleasure.